There's something about cabins in the woods, the kind you rent for a peaceful getaway. No neighbors, no noise, just you, nature, and silence. But silence isn't always comforting. Sometimes it listens, and sometimes it watches. This story was submitted by Mark H., who rented a secluded Airbnb cabin in the Colorado Rockies in the winter of 2020. He thought it would be a romantic escape with his girlfriend, but what they experienced turned out to be the most terrifying few nights of their lives. Mark and Lisa had been together for 4 years. He worked in tech, she was a school counselor, they were in their early 30s, stable, happy, and planning a future together. For their anniversary, they wanted something different, something quiet and unplugged. Lisa found a cozy A-frame cabin listed on Airbnb in a place called Fairplay, Colorado. It was a 2-hour drive from Denver, surrounded by thick forest, no nearby houses, and perfect 5-star reviews. The listing said it had off-grid charm with a wood stove, solar power, and even a hot tub. Mark was skeptical about the isolation, but Lisa insisted. She liked the idea of disconnecting. They arrived just before sunset on a Friday in late January. Snow blanketed the area, and the air had that crisp, electric quiet you only get deep in the mountains. The cabin was adorable, small, triangular, and made of dark wood. Inside, it was even better than the pictures. A cast iron stove glowed in the corner, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The place had a romantic, fairy tale feel. They unpacked, opened a bottle of wine, and spent the night playing board games, laughing, and watching snow fall outside. At around 11 p.m., Mark stepped out to get more firewood. As he walked back toward the cabin, something in the woods made him pause. It was just the crunch of snow underfoot, maybe a rabbit or deer, but something about it felt off. He brushed it off and went back inside. He didn't mention it to Lisa. The next morning, they woke to a stunning sunrise. They made pancakes and went snowshoeing. The area around the cabin was pure wilderness, no signs of life, no traffic, no sounds but wind and the creak of trees. But when they returned that afternoon, Mark noticed something strange. There were footprints near the porch, human footprints. They weren't his, and they weren't Lisa's. These were larger, heavier, spaced oddly, almost like the person had been dragging one foot. They led from the woods to the edge of the cabin, then disappeared behind it. He followed them around the back, but the snow had been disturbed, like someone had intentionally brushed them away or doubled back. Lisa found him staring at the ground. "What is it?" she asked. "Nothing," Mark said, forcing a smile. "Just wildlife." That night, around 2 a.m., Mark was woken by a sound, a soft creaking, like footsteps on wood. He sat up in bed, listening. The wind was still. No trees moving, no animals. Then he heard it again. Thump, thump, scrape. He got up and looked outside. Nothing. Just moonlight on snow. He locked the door, though he swore he already had. The third night, the atmosphere shifted. Lisa had been uneasy all day. She said she felt watched when they went hiking, like something was following them at a distance. They cut the hike short and stayed indoors. After dinner, Lisa took a bath while Mark sat by the stove reading. Around 9 p.m., the tapping started. Tap, 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 software rhythmic. Like a single knuckle against glass, it came from the front window. Mark froze. He looked over. Nothing. Then, tap, tap, tap. Now from the bedroom window. He stood, walked to it slowly, and peered outside. Again, nothing. He checked all the windows. No sign of anyone. Lisa came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, and saw his expression. "What's wrong?" He didn't want to worry her, but she saw it anyway. "Someone's outside, aren't they?" "I don't know. I don't see anyone." She insisted they call the host. They did. The host, a middle-aged man named Ron, was calm and polite. "Ma'am, I've never had an issue out there. It's probably just wildlife. Elk bump against the windows sometimes, but if you're uncomfortable, I can refund the remaining nights." Lisa declined. They only had one night left. Mark reinforced the doors and windows. He jammed a chair under the front doorknob. That night, neither of them slept. The final night was the worst. It started the same. Calm, quiet, tense. They ate leftovers, packed up most of their stuff, and tried to relax. Lisa sat with her back to the fire. Mark sat by the kitchen counter. Then the power went out. The solar panels must have died, or the battery cut off. The cabin was pitched into total darkness, except for the fire. That's when they heard it. Creak, 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 footsteps on the porch. Then, scrape. Something was being dragged. Wood against wood. Lisa whispered, "Is that the wind?" Mark slowly reached for the flashlight on the table. It flickered to life. He tiptoed to the window and aimed the beam outside. At first, nothing. Then, a shape, just barely within the light. A figure, standing still. Too tall, too thin, its face obscured by a hoodie or mask. Mark gasped and stumbled back. "What is it?" Lisa whispered. "There's someone outside." They heard a thump, then another, the porch, closer. Mark grabbed a fireplace poker. Lisa crouched behind the sofa, holding her phone, but there was no signal. Suddenly, the front door rattled, hard, once, twice. The chair jammed under the knob vibrated with each impact. Lisa began to cry, quietly. Mark stood there, gripping the poker, waiting, daring the lock to break. Then, silence. No footsteps, no sounds, just the fire popping. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Mark finally crept to the door. The knob was still, unmoving. He unlocked it slowly and swung it open with the poker raised. Nothing. But something else caught his eye. Footprints, muddy, human, leading away, back into the woods. He followed them a few steps, then stopped. There were more than one set, one coming in from the woods, but another from under the porch, leading around the cabin, and another set, smaller, coming out from under the crawl space. At dawn, they left. They didn't pack. They just grabbed their bags and drove. Snow still falling, shadows long across the road. They called the local sheriff when they reached town. An officer went to investigate and found what Mark had suspected, but didn't want to believe. There was evidence of someone living in the crawl space under the cabin. Blankets, food wrappers, a backpack, tools, a rusty crowbar. The officer said it wasn't the first time something like that had happened in the area. Squatters sometimes find remote homes and hide out under them, watching, waiting for the right moment. The host was investigated but found innocent. Apparently, he had no idea someone had been staying beneath his rental. Airbnb removed the listing temporarily. Mark and Lisa never went back to the mountains. They moved to an apartment in the city and never rented a remote Airbnb again. Sometimes horror isn't supernatural. Sometimes it's flesh and blood. A real person, watching you through the slats in the floor, listening from under your bed, waiting under the porch. Be careful where you stay. Not all strangers knock. Some are already inside. Some Airbnb nightmares are easy to avoid. Bad hosts, messy rooms, false advertising. But this wasn't something a refund could fix. This story was submitted by Jason R., a college graduate who took a solo trip to a small town in Pennsylvania to focus on writing. He wanted solitude. What he got was a creeping horror that unfolded slowly, night after night, just beyond the bedroom door. Jason had just graduated from New York University and was burnt out from 4 years of city noise. So he found a secluded Airbnb in a sleepy town called Millwood, Pennsylvania. It was an old Victorian house from the 1890s, beautifully restored, with a private upstairs floor available for guests. The listing was glowing. Charming, quiet, full of history. Host lives downstairs, private entrance. The host, Marianne, was a retired librarian in her 60s, and every review called her gracious, helpful, and warm. Jason arrived on a Sunday afternoon. The house was stunning. Big wraparound porch, tall windows, and this stillness that made time feel slower. Marianne greeted him in a floral apron, smiling. "I keep to myself," she said. "You'll barely know I'm here." Jason settled in. His quarters were on the second floor, a bedroom, bathroom, a small desk, and a locked door at the end of the hall labeled "Storage Do Not Open." He didn't think much of it. That night, he unpacked, made tea, and opened his laptop. He was working on a horror novella and thought the isolation would help. At midnight, as he typed, he heard something. A soft creak, then a shuffle. He froze. It came from the hallway, the floorboards. He turned off the lamp and listened. Nothing. Just wind outside. Old houses make sounds, he told himself, but he couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been standing just outside his door. Over the next 2 days, Jason wrote during the day and explored the town. He barely saw Marianne, only a plate of fresh muffins left on the kitchen counter each morning. But at night, things got strange. The second night, he heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate. He got up and opened the door. Empty. He checked the front stairs. They were still locked. The third night, the footsteps returned, but this time, they were accompanied by whispering. Jason couldn't make out the words, just a soft mumble, like someone talking to themselves. He put his ear to the door and heard a voice say, "Don't go in there." Then silence. Jason flung the door open. Again, no one. But this time, he noticed something. The locked storage door at the end of the hall was slightly ajar. He walked toward it, heart pounding. It was pitch black inside. He pushed the door open and reached in to find a light switch. Click. The room was empty. Just old boxes, a rocking chair, and a thick layer of dust. But on the far wall, Jason noticed something bizarre. An old wooden door, painted shut, like someone had tried to seal it. But it wasn't part of the room's original layout. It had no knob, no frame, just a door and a wall that led nowhere. He stared at it for a long time, feeling cold even though the heater was on. He shut the room and went back to bed, locking his door. That night, he dreamt of the door. In the dream, it creaked open slowly, revealing complete darkness and a whisper. "It's awake now." The next morning, he confronted Marianne. "What's behind the wall in the storage room?" he asked. Her expression changed instantly, from warm to guarded. "It's nothing," she said. "Old construction. A sealed-off pantry, I think." "Why does it feel like someone's up there at night?" She avoided his eyes. "It's an old house. It makes noises. That's all." Jason didn't buy it. That evening, when he came back from dinner, the muffins on the counter had a note. "Please don't go back in that room." He hadn't told her he went in. He didn't sleep that night. He locked his door, stacked a chair under the knob, and stayed up reading. Around 2:17 a.m., he heard it again. Footsteps. Then the whisper returned, right outside the door. "We saw you." Jason jumped up, flashlight in hand. A loud thump echoed through the hall. He opened his door and aimed the light toward the storage room. The door was wide open. Jason crept forward, flashlight shaking. The room was colder now, freezing, like a basement in winter. The wooden door in the wall had changed. It had a doorknob now, old brass, rusted. But there, he reached out, compelled, like something inside wanted him to touch it. Suddenly, footsteps thundered up the stairs. Marianne burst into the room. "Don't open it," she yelled. "Please." Jason backed away. She slammed the storage room shut and locked it. "I should have told you," she said, eyes wide with fear. "That door isn't part of this house. It was bricked up when I moved in. Then one day, it was just there." Jason didn't understand. "It's not a pantry," she said. "It's older. From a house that burned down a century ago. This house was built over it. I thought it was gone." but every few years, it wakes up. Jason packed his things and left the next morning. A few months later, Jason got curious. He searched old town archives, and sure enough, on the same plot of land in 1904, there was a house. It burned down. 5 people died inside. One body was never recovered. A little boy who loved to hide behind doors. Jason never went back to Millwood. But sometimes, in dreams, he sees that door, the one in the wall, and he hears it. I'm still waiting on the other side. Some places hide things beneath the paint, behind the walls. Some doors shouldn't be opened, and if you find yourself in a strange old house and hear a whisper outside your door at night, don't answer. Not everything behind a door wants to be found.